Greetings all, this is Meten from Platonic Planes, and this video I'm going to do on the gateway transit of the sun through gate 61. Then the sun will move into gate 60 and then into the 41. And interestingly enough, this has been the past movement of Pluto until where it is today in gate 41. But in the past couple years, 2 to 3 years, Pluto's been moving through these Capricorn gates. And so where we see the sun for this week, January 11th, I think this will be Sunday. Let me double check here. Yeah, it'll be Sunday in the United States. In Australia, probably a day before. And this will move us right into the following week, where the sun will be in gate 60 and then into 41. And that'll be around the 20th to the 27th when the sun and Pluto goes Cassimi into the sun, as all the personal planets kind of pass through that gateway of Capricorn, of Pluto. And so for this particular gate, we have in Ra's Array V Ching, we have the definition as inner truth. And so it's a gate that is this is an individual gate, actually. It being right there in between the two collective gates on the side. What Ra notes here is that we are alive and moving in space, and through this interaction, the environment as we move, the abstract person interacts with that environment in its relative present and reflects on it as a past phenomenon. The logical person goes through this movement and takes in the information and projects it into the future's path. They are in the same kind of business. They are in the business of relating to what they have gone through. But when you come to the individuality of the 61, when you come to inner truth, none of that exists. This is not a visual mental process. It's acoustic. Like everything having to do with the individual mutative process, the 61 as an inspiration is not the visions passing through the mind, but the static noise inside of the mind that keeps the mind occupied. This is a very interesting central definition that Ra's making about how this is an individual gate. And you could see through the center here, we have the 61 up here, right there on the head center, and all these gates going down right there in the middle, all the way down the 61, 24, 43, 23, 8, 1, 2, 14, 3, and 60. This is all acoustic. This is all individual. This is all mutative. These are the gates of the mutants. And individuals are mutative beings. And so these are very significant in a relationship to doing things your own way. These are not collective definitions, so this particular gate speaks to one's individual vision. And what Ra notes is that whenever you deal with individual knowing at a mental level, it's important to understand the law of the knower, which is to know what is knowable and of value to know what is knowable, and unnecessary. You don't necessarily have to know how a jet engine operates to get by in this life, and to know what is unknowable. The knower has to leave alone what is unknowable. If you don't know what is unknowable and you can't leave it alone, you go mad. And so this is kind of very interesting awareness of knowing about things in this world, but but with the not knowing every possible aspect of them. It's especially not necessary to know, unless you are a jet engine operator, to know exactly how it works. I mean, most people do not, to be honest, from what I understand, nor can anyone easily explain how planes and jets actually hold and fly, which is a very fascinating kind of subject to get into. Ra notes that Gateway 61, inner truth, you have in the image of the I Ching, you have this kind of yang sandwich with yin inside. So that inner truth is really penetrating to all this yang propaganda to get to the yin essence. He notes this is the gate of mystery, the gate of my story. This is individual knowing, which is a spontaneous mutation, and because of that it has no foundation in either the past or the future. It is not a sequence, a pattern. It is something more spontaneous, mysterious. My story, this mysterious knowing. The fuel is the pressure of the unknowable or the unknown. This is what is driving the 61. It must know for itself. It must know in the same way that the 28 has to know that life is of value, or that the 55 has to know deeply that a spirit exists in this life. The 61 is the inspiration for the whole mental process of knowing. The 61 wants one thing only, silence in the mind. No voices talking, no dialogue, nothing, but maybe music, like the 55 I added in. The energy mechanic is the struggle for silence. Recognize that silence in this sense means that you know what you need to know. Whenever I deal with the 61, I always go to the Oracle of Delphi, which says, know thyself. Know thyself is the only thing of value to know. Everything else is secondary. If you know yourself, the unknowable is you. And you do not have to seek the unknowable at all, because the moment that you truly know yourself, you know the mystery of life because you get to live it. Because you are designated for your mystery, for your story. What the 61 wants to know is, what is my story? Who am I? How does it all work? What does it all mean to get to inner truth? In the Black Book, Ray V. Ching, it says, the awareness of universal underlying principles. To know what the universal principles are, not to make them up. Not to think that they happened in the past and believe that they were there. That they knew something that we did not, or that in the future somehow. You see, the most incredible thing about being human is that the collective is always at the mercy of the mutation. Like the tribe, mutation is what makes all of this interesting. Mutation is what breaks us out of the old abstract cycles. It shatters the pattern of mutation, brings us into a new realization, recognition, wonder, and it's there all the time. So that's a lot that Ra kind of packs in to this understanding of inner truth, but it seems its negation is the necessity of knowing exactly what is occurring. He's getting to the point that there is no exact transcription or detail or kernel of truth, but rather the truth in itself is in the essence of the individual mutation and in a form of beingness, being that, being human, being in that process of one's own individuation and mutation. And so in that sense, he's talking about a transcendence of words to a space beyond what words can define. So this is a gate that moves past the left and right brain constructs of humanity. This is a gate that represents not the negation, but the transcendence of the limitations of what we as humans find so comfortable and that is our right brain religions or our left brain sciences. We seem to, many of us, arrive at stages in life where we're on the way to some sort of definitive meaning of what life is or how life works. And so many of us at those particular stages will decide to choose a religion or a particular type of science as a way to at least linguistically navigate, or structurally in their life navigate, like what life is and how it works. And that happens to all of us. Some of us start our life with the kind of right brain visions that our families kind of hold on to, which are more religious oriented, and then sometimes graduate into a more left brain vision of how life works, whether it's scientism and its various functions and formats, perhaps to the point that many people describe reality now as a kind of quantum reality, which in itself is a transcendence of the materialist scientific paradigm, and perhaps represents more of a mutative kind of system than scientism itself, which is usually a very structured left brain process which has an answer for everything, whereas more quantum frames and perspectives do not. And yet it still could be classified as a form of science, but perhaps the most kind of mutative, individuated expression of how life may or may not work. And so with this gate 61, those who have it, what I've noticed is this incessant kind of circular process to get to the kernels of truth. Almost an obsession with truth I've observed in these people who have it. It's like a compass that no matter what it finds continually is going to be facing north, and just re-indicate over and over again different variations of a knowingness of this is the way, this is it. And at the same time, it's always, and I noticed this with 61s as well, is that they're always penetrating past falsities. Like they may arrive at a truth only to find that that truth is not truly genuine, and that it's actually fake or false. And these instances of inner truth can arrive in flashes of inspiration. And this type of inspiration is about what's authentic, what feels authentic, what feels true. And this is a gate about deep epiphanies and a knowing, a trust that truth will reveal itself. This is what Chetan notes in his book on human design. Trust that truth will reveal itself as you consider and contemplate for your own benefit and that of others. You can rely on this resolute sword of truth to provide inner reassurance in all situations. So this is truth at the cost of any structure. So even a structure that a 61 might create will be toppled in a moment if there is falseness. And falseness is found rather quickly by the penetrating energy of this gateway of the 61. Chetan notes in his book sub-definitions as sincerity, mystery. Your innermost sincerity compels you toward what you know to be true. The pressure to know and the eventual realization that your thoughts can lead you to glimpse truth but cannot maintain a hold on it. And that truth happens in a silent mind. So there's a lot in here, especially with Chetan underscoring that truth is something that cannot be held on to. This is really fascinating. I'll never forget a dream I had once where I had grasped the quote-unquote ultimate veritas, the ultimate truth, and I grasped it in a sense of knowingness. And then I woke up from the dream, still very fresh with the memory that I had grasped the truth. And I went to write down the dream, and I had nothing to write because it was just a sense of knowing, a sense of truth, but ultimately there was nothing I could say. It was some sort of dream that the feeling or the energy of an ultimate truth was captured, but somehow there was no way to describe it. It was what it was. Just reminded me of that, which of course reflects the further proposition that Chetan adds, which is truth happens in a silent mind. So it's the idea that there's no truth except through the transcendence of that which can express truth. So a tautology, no doubt, a circular tautology. And in its lower frequencies, it's a kind of, described both by Chetan and Gene Keys by Rudd, as a type of psychosis, and in the higher vibrations as a form of inspiration and sanctity. And Ra utilized that word a lot, that word inspiration. So there's something very special about understanding this gate through what inspires one. And I'm going to start with Rudd's kind of organization of the lower frequency representation of this gate. And we'll see this again active January 11th. You can see it here on the top. And these are the people that, once they arrive at some truth, it's not like they ever really arrive. It's like a Philip K. Dick story. Hope we will arrive soon. Where this character wakes up. He's on a mission to some other planet, and the mission is going to take like 6,000 years. And so all the travelers, all the astronauts are in cryogenic sleep. And one of them wakes up. And so the computer thinks as quick as it can and discusses the problem with the passenger, who wakes up and says, there's no way you can be awake like this for the next 6,000 years. So I'm going to feed you simulations of your arrival on the planet that we're going to. And so the character, who's woken up on the ship, says, through this telepathic conversation with the computer, says, yes, okay. And the computer then proceeds to simulate his eventual arrival on the planet. But this happens over and over again, like a dream, like a repeating dream in the mind of the character, so that when he arrives in the planet at the ultimate conclusion of the story, he arrives there and he describes to his fellow passengers, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen next, that's what's going to happen next. And instead of it being some ultimate revelation of the moment of truth of his experience, it turns out to be a mad delusion, a mad form of psychosis, where the character can never wake up again, but is stuck living out these fantasies, these visual fantasies that the computer's no longer feeding him. He's in reality, but it's too late. He's been living in those fantasies, and those fantasies have become his reality. Kind of a negative, dark side version of this gate, because it is a gate that returns again and again and again to check the nature of truth. Does it still stand, or is there an update for it? Is there a falseness that's been hiding there all along to be revealed? And so the 61 shadow, it represents this pressure of why And it does represent, on a shadow level, like the story Hope I Will Arrive Soon by Philip K. Dick, this kind of loss of contact with reality. And thus, in this situation, the true nature of the mind is obscured. Because the true nature of the mind is more operating in beingness, emptiness. But this is rather the obsession of just not being able to exhaust the content, becoming stuck in the content instead of the ultimate reality. So instead of being present for finally arriving at reality, the character in the story loses himself in the repeated psychosis of not ever being able to experience a direct reality. And so this is the most common form of this gate. So you'll notice with people with the 61 is, especially in low frequency, is there's a lot of tautology. There's a lot of circular process happening. Revisiting something over and over again, being stuck, and just kind of obsessed with certain content until they can transcend it, until they can go beyond the images or the words to the essence, and to the essence of beingness, of their own individuated personal my story awareness. And Rudd addresses this question of why, this kind of human question of why. And he addresses it as an aberration caused by the limitations of our current awareness. This makes a lot of sense to me because, as a researcher, as a kind of agent of awareness of truth for so long, myself not having this particular gate, but other individual gates, have recognized that at some point, I'll give you an example, like, people relentlessly love to point out, and especially on YouTube and comment columns over and over again, how, this is, our calendar is false, this Roman calendar is not accurate, or the tropical astrological system is not accurate, and the Deutsche system is more accurate because it reflects the true sky, and then other people say tropical is more accurate because it reflects the path of the life force, which is the sun, and this date's not correct, this calendar's not correct because Ophiuchus is not included, and on and on and on and on. We're really in a 13-month lunar calendar, and on and on and on, forgetting that the calendar we have now is the reality because we think it is. The majority consensus has power. It's not like some kind of secret power to know this is the real calendar and I know it, no one else does. That doesn't make it, just because it's esoteric and hidden, it doesn't make it, although the elites would have you think differently, as they definitely do utilize a certain type of calendar with their astrology. But nonetheless, the astrology that we think it is the astrology that's operating. And that's why you find so many astrologers very accurate in their assessment using tropical, especially tropical astrology. And, but again, we need not get obsessed with these things. Becoming obsessed with them is pretending that there's an exact translation of the truth through the language of astrology. And although there is, but it's not exact. There's planets and bodies that we don't really know about. We pretend like the 9 planets that we utilize, or 10, counting the Earth, encompass all the aspects of what occurs on this Earth, but I don't know. I don't think so. There's new bodies discovered all the time. There's definitely other dwarf planets and stars that have become more and more relevant over the past 20, 30 years, and whose definitions have been created by kind of mass consciousness as we've taken those particular planets or stars in. And I'm talking about Chiron, I'm talking about Eris, and there's others. And these are important. And we can see that astrologers who choose to study those planets or stars or dwarf planets can see that. So we're always grasping for truth, but we're never coming back with a full hand. We do come back with a full hand, but it's not everything. We lose some sand in the effort to grasp all the sand that's available, that's happening. And this is what the 61's about. But the obsession with pretending that we can grasp everything that is, that's a form of sickness. And Rudd also makes that clear with his idea of the fact, as I kind of noted before already, that with our left brain and right brain stuckness, some humans get stuck in their left, some humans get stuck in their right, and so they favor either right brain religion or left brain kind of science religions, scientisms. And it's about a type of pressure that creates this why or how, or needing to know exactly how something works. And of course, this is a form of negation. It's a form of obsession. It's a form of not experiencing reality. It's a form of not being in the body. And I notice with people that have this gate, especially when they're younger, they can get obsessed with irrelevant details and kind of use it as a form of escapism instead of just being in your body and experiencing what you need to experience. Because ultimately, in every video that I cover on these particular gateways, I always arrive at the same truth, which is what human design describes, what Ra describes, that the essence of truth is in beingness. It's in being in a body, being embodied. That's what it is. It's really that simple. The processes by which we arrive there are fascinating, and we can talk about all day and all year. But the ultimate truth is just being in form and personally experiencing consciousness. That's it. And I don't mean that facetiously, as if that's it. That's a whole thing. That's our life. I just mean it in the sense that why pretend to make it something otherwise or more than it is or less than it is. And getting caught up in these kind of structures creates that problem, that kind of just that madness or psychosis. And so Rudd notes this idea that I'm sure many of us have heard of, this idea of the Maya. And this band Cynic has this great song called Veil of Maya, where they kind of talk about, in the first lyrics to the song, it's balance every joy with a grief. So this idea of balance in the world. The idea that there's a perceptive cloak thrown over the world. A great illusion kind of thrown over it. For us to kind of discover the real essence behind that illusion. Kind of like Neptune. Neptune has its veil. And Rudd reminds us that the true nature of reality is frequency. It's always frequency. And so we're talking about frequency shifts in all the gateways, in the different gateways. And in this gateway, it's a shift to a higher awareness, one that doesn't rely on details. One that does not rely on exactly how something works. And Rudd actually talks about how humans will do anything to get rid of the pressure that's in our minds. The pressure to figure things out. The pressure to know the truth or realize the truth or find out the truth. And he says to release that pressure, we have to go right into the heart of pressure rather than trying to make it go away. And he talks about the kind of elusive nature of trying to form these mental constructs around what we call reality in order to kind of protect our intellectual conceptions of things. And the paradox that we arrive at by trying to describe the truth, the same that I arrived at in my dream, which was in the realization of the truth, there was no ability to communicate it. This is also very common in the literature of Franz Kafka, Jorge Luis Borges, Adolfo Bioy Casares, some of the great mystical, kind of surrealist, fantasist authors. Also, the early American greats, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Rudyard Kipling, Herman Melville. Try reading some of those short stories by any of those characters, and you'll see the kernel of the truth of the story is always ineffable. You're not able to capture it exactly and communicate it precisely. I'll be reading, by the way, another novel as I like to read. I'm going to be reading Kafka's The Castle, which begins with a description of a castle that's not quite even there, and a character gazing into the castle, which in German, the term gaze actually means creating with your vision. It's just a magnificent opus in tribute to this idea of beingness. And it just mocks this whole idea of humans attempting to think they can describe reality with words clearly and definitively. Which again, I'm kind of mocking here, and so is Gateway 61 of Inner Truth. It's allowing for the mystery. It's not pretending that mystery can be penetrated, because it can't, because that's the heart of mystery lies in the individual experience. And that's what this gate is. It's an individual gate. It's not collective. If you look here, 64 and the 47, 63 and the 4, all these particular channels on the outside of this middle one, they're collective. They have to do with the collective. So they're logical. They're the frameworks of collective civilization. It's how we work with others. It's how we communicate in the collective. But this channel all the way down to center, all these gates, they're individuals. They're unique in their expressive capacity. And as you know, with our arrival of 2027's Cross of the Sleeping Phoenix, we are moving into an individuated cross, where it is the individuated is going to become more important than the collective. Right now we're living in a time where it's all about the collective. What's the collective truth? What's the collective answer? What's the collective system, And that's all going to come to a complete transformation, complete destruction and recreation. And so in its repressive aspect, it's disenchanted from reality, and in its reactive aspect, it's fanatical, as I've mentioned, obsessed. And in its gift presentation, as Rudd described it, it's inspiration. And it's the idea of to stop worshiping God. Whether you're worshiping the God of scientism or the God of religion, it's the moment to stop and to become that God yourself. So it's a dismantling of inner realities that have been built essentially by your mind. These are all constructs. And Rudd goes on to say that creativity is the single most important gift for drawing humanity out of its mass psychosis. So what is the creative process? We come to this with humans all the time. The creative process is you're becoming a god. Because that's what the process is of creating. And inspiration begins when you place yourself in such a position. And an inspiration is a kind of flash of awareness that comes in the process of being creative. And there are many aspects to this form of creativity, this form of inspiration that comes about and has to do with patience. And from patience comes the ability to handle challenges. Creativity is something that takes time. And so you have to live with that the process will take time to complete itself, whatever it is. Whatever is created forth from that creative act. Now, Rudd goes on to talk about how inspiration is a spiritual process because it serves to loosen the hold of your mental constructs and open and expand the capacity for love. And he talks about this further as a wordless expression of inspiration to be expressed. And in this process, we begin to release and let go of these obsessive definitions that we in the past have attempted to hide reality with and pretend that it's something else, that it's this grand edifice. You'll see similar if you listen to my reading of The Castle by Kafka, because in the castle is a kind of symbolic mirror that's invested in by the people of the village as some sort of edifice of truth that no one character can really unravel, but attempts to. It's some grand kind of mystery. And this is about giving up that mystery, this higher awareness of the gift of 62 or 61 is giving up that mystery, moving past it. And Rudd also notes that evolution is a force that is breaking out from inside of us, and that to unlock its secrets, we have only to look inward. So again, we have this kind of mystical instruction to, even in our own minds, to grow to a point where there's not just these words in our minds all the time that distracts us, but rather finding a calmness, an emptiness, a nothingness, a beingness. Just mirroring the outward experience. And just being in the world. And not holding on. It's almost a form of nihilism, not holding on to these calcified, brittle judgments or qualifications of realities like this or realities like that. You don't know. We don't know. Reality is an intersection and an interaction. It's a meeting point between you and your experience of life. That's what it is. And I'll sign that one. Now, in its highest frequency, Rudd notes it as a city power, as entering the unknowable. Inspiration is unimportant to the one who is truly inspired. So here is where inspiration is already captured in the being. And here is where the mind ceases all mental activity and abruptly ceases, Rudd notes. And then there is a pregnant silence. And here Rudd starts to sound like Gurdjieff in saying that the underlying nature of reality is a descent into sanctity. And until you come to rest within it, you are asleep. And the outward perception that others look upon one like this is holiness. And Ra notes that we find their power irresistible or terrifying. In our psychosis, we deify or worship it. And so supposedly these people are walking demonstrations of this power. And that they cannot really help us in any way. And we do deify these mystics to some regard, some of us do. But really they can only serve as a kind of mirror for us. Nothing else. Because they are in themselves mirroring the essence of what reality is. Because they're being it. So they're in just like perfect mirror and reflection to it. And Rudd this is really cool. So Rudd actually brought up that this leads to a lot of confusion. It really does. When people talk about these mystics or these mystic types or like mystical thinkers, for example, Vladimir Nabokov and Jorge Luis Borges are two examples of eccentric mystical writers who, in their interviews, neither of them would agree to, well, even mostly Nabokov, he wouldn't agree to an interview unless he received the questions ahead of time. This is fascinating because even the interview itself was a creative, inspired construct of reality. So he wasn't going to answer, in the moment, which one might think, okay, that's a true expression of beingness, right? To be present and answer in the moment. But to create a construct of that attempt to capture his reality is what he was doing. He was making an art of it. It's not to say you can't create art in the moment. I mean, obviously the surrealists were very interested in those kind of ideas and expressions. But it's this kind of idea that goes to a certain extreme that questions authenticity in itself or the attempt to do it in the moment. Maybe I'm going too far, but I think what the other kind of popular idealism is that, it's said in culture, never meet your idols, right? Because you'll be disappointed. Or the idea that you meet, a great master, teacher, and because you can't comprehend their state, how can you comprehend them? So your perceptions get kind of drowned in like false constructs that you've created for who they are. And it's so easy to do that because, again, if they are indeed a mystical kind of dwelling in this kind of high frequency of Gate 61, that they're living the beingness of this reality, then what is that to you who are stuck in psychosis, or myself that's stuck in the psychosis of the 61? And if you want to know if you're at this level or closely arriving at it, just ask yourself, do you really have any questions about life still? Do you really care to answer things? Can you live a life with no answers? Instead of finding out the mystery of who you are, can you just live the mystery of who you are? Rudd notes that once inner truth dawns, then all words, answers, descriptions are completely negated. And this is like the understanding of what a lot of the stories I've read on my channel convey, especially Kafka and Borges and Bioy Casares. With the island of, the Bioy Casares story that I read, The Invention of Morale. If you hear me as I narrate that story, the narrator himself is attempting to describe the central gravity of his reality. But as in his ontology, the nature of his reality is negated at every turn. And so you have a character who can't quite find the ground of his reality. And so you have this kind of psychosis. So in our process to arrive at some to arrive at some form of truth, in itself, that process is flawed because we can't arrive at it. We are it. We are it. That's it. And now I sound like that American Zen philosopher whose name I'm forgetting right now, who I like a lot though. And he was a woodcat, and I'm forgetting his name right now, but he was very clear in expressing those paradoxes, that it's not somewhere that we can arrive at, like in the story by Philip K. Dick, Hope I Will Arrive Soon. We're not we're not arriving anywhere. We are already it. We're arriving at every moment, or we're not. The arrival in itself is the flight to ourselves, and not the flight from ourselves, which is the programming. The programming is to leave the self. Oh, it's exhausting being in a body. Let me get out of here. Let me just drink some beer. Let me just watch this movie. Let me just work on this thesis. None of that's wrong. All that's great. All that's part of the ladder to this awareness and realization. And that's why at the end of it, you throw away the book that you wrote. You push down the ladder because you've already arrived at the top of the roof. You don't need the ladder anymore. And so that's what it is. Hope you guys enjoyed my musing. One of my favorite gates in human design, Gate 61, and Capricorn Gate nonetheless. And so this week with this particular gate, we may find ourselves stuck on something, obsessing over something. So just watch that, observe that. What are you obsessing over this week, and where can you go with that? Can you find and can you meet that wall and be okay with that wall being there? And just kind of have fun with the process. And when you come to a wall in life, what do? You ask yourself, you don't try and blow up the wall or fight the wall or yell at the wall, or, maybe you do all those things too, but ultimately what you want to do is see what else is possible. And with that, I'll leave you guys. Enjoy this week. This is the kind of build up with the new moon slowly arriving later this week into all the planets going through the Cazimi with the sun, including Pluto, our yearly Pluto conjunct sun. And that'll be next week. And that'll be for gate 60, I feel. All right, you guys, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Please do comment, ask questions. Let me know if you enjoyed this musing or if I went too far or too long. And take care.